Well, it's Monday and looking forward to another great week in the book of Isaiah. We're in this big section of Isaiah from chapter 40 to 66 called the Book of Consolation. And in a section of the Book of Consolation that is going to be about the servant of the Lord. Sometimes that servant, you have to look in the context. Sometimes that servant is the Messiah. Other times it's Israel. So we'll be trying to discern that as we go through here. Chapter 42, I've called this the work of the Messiah. I think it's primarily about the Messiah as the servant, but it does end with a section about Israel. So let's look at this work of the Messiah. Notice verses 1 through 4. Take a pencil or a marker and mark all the times it talks about justice. In here, it's at the end of verse 1. He talks about justice at the end of verse 3, and again in verse 4. So in 4 verses, he talks about justice. So I've labeled this section, "The Servant Brings Justice." "Behold my servant, whom I uphold, my chosen, in whom my soul delights. I have put my spirit upon him." And of course, this recalls the prophecies of the coming Messiah back in Isaiah chapter 9 and chapter 11. "I will put my spirit upon him, and he will bring forth justice to the nations. He will not cry aloud or lift up his voice or make it heard in the streets. A bruised reed he will not break. Faintly burning wick he will not quench." Of course, later in the New Testament, this is applied to Jesus himself, the ultimate Messiah. "He will not grow faint or be discouraged till he has established justice on the earth, and the coastlands wait for his law." So again, recalling even Isaiah chapter 2, where it talks about that coming Messiah, that Jerusalem will be lifted up, the nations are going to be streaming to them. So the servant brings justice in 1 to 4. Verses 5 to 9, we could say that the servant delivers God's people. Look what it says. "Thus says the Lord, says God the Lord, who created the heavens and stretched them out, who spread out the earth and what comes from it, who gives breath to the people on it and spirit to those who walk in it. I am the Lord. I have called you in righteousness." When he says it called you, I think he's referring to that messianic servant, this ultimate servant. "I will take you by the hand and keep you. I will give you as a covenant for the people, a light for the nations, to open the eyes that are blind, to bring out the prisoners from the dungeon, from the prison those who sit in darkness. I am the Lord, this is my name. My glory I give to no other, nor my praise to carve idols. Behold, the former things have come to pass, and new things I now declare. Before they spring forth, I tell them. I tell you of them." So here again, we have this Spirit of God, the servant of God, who's going to deliver God's people, free them from the dungeon, bring them out of darkness. The Lord is going to do this, and the Lord alone. Verses 10 through 13, more of what the servant is going to do. He's going to be a victorious warrior. "Sing to the Lord a new song, his praises from the end of the earth. You who go down to the sea and all that fills it, the coastlands and their inhabitants." Verse 13, "The Lord goes out like a mighty man. Like a man of war, he stirs up his zeal. He cries out, he shouts aloud. He shows himself mighty among his foes. For a long time I have held my peace. I have kept still and restrained myself. Now I will cry out like a woman in labor. I will gasp and pant." So here we see the Lord rousing himself to victory through battle. That he's going to be a warrior servant, a warrior Messiah that's going to come crying out as a woman cries when she's in the throes of labor. Finally, let me just point out, again, as in the last chapter, there's this whole series of "I wills" from verses 15 through 16. "I will lay waste the mountains. I will turn the rivers into islands. I will lead the blind. I will guide them. I will turn darkness into light." These are all unilateral promises Unilateral in the sense that God alone, the Messiah alone, is going to do these things. And we're to hope on him. We're to look forward to his coming. Verse 18 turns to the nation now. Remember in Isaiah, he's speaking to a people who are really slow learners. They won't refuse to listen. They won't respond. And he addresses them here. Hear you deaf and look you blind that you may see. Who is blind but my servant, or deaf as my messenger whom I send? Who is blind as my dedicated one, or blind as the servant of the Lord? So I don't think he's talking about a blind Messiah here, but a blind servant that is the nation at this point. He's called the nation blind and deaf several times in this book, and he addresses them here. He sees many things but does not observe them. His ears are open, but he does not hear. Again, this is reminding us of what God said to Isaiah in Isaiah chapter 6, verses 9 and 10. This is a people plundered and looted. They are, all of them, trapped in holes and hidden in prisons. They have become plunder, with none to rescue, spoil, and with none to say restore. Who among you will give ear to this? So he's asking them, who's going to learn from this? Who's going to pay attention? Who will attend and listen from the time to come? So again, he's challenging the people that the Lord, the Messiah, is going to do all of these things. So learn these things now, my servant Israel. Learn these things, open your eyes, hear these things now while there is still time. So an interesting chapter here. This work of the Messiah that's really summarized and anticipating what Jesus will do, the ultimate Messiah, the ultimate deliverer. Jesus himself, who also spoke to people who were blind and deaf and were slow to listen, refused to listen, but God keeps a remnant. So I pray, brothers and sisters, that you take heed. As you read through Isaiah, you note these things. You learn from Israel, as Paul tells us to do in Romans chapter 15, verse 4. Learn their lesson. May God give us all spiritual eyes to see and ears to hear. God bless you.